All right. Hey everybody, and happy 24. It's the first Gimbalabs Playground of the new year. It's January 9th, 2024. We get together here most Tuesdays starting at 1800 UTC to just have a big picture conversation. So we haven't met since December. Took the last few weeks off, but today we've got Harsha, a dear friend and longtime collaborator inside of Plutus PBL, presenting some recent work on the natural language Cardano indexer he's building. And I'm excited about this one. We connected in December about Harsha, what you're building, and it felt so natural to move back and forth between the technical conversation as you were sharing the thing and how you built it, but also with the kind of bigger picture implications. And really, that's the sweet spot we're trying to make space for here at Gimbalabs Playground. We know that not everybody's a developer, but we believe very strongly that the more people understand about the technology that they're using in their lives, the better ideas they're going to have, and the more they're going to be able to participate. So we're not here to make you become a developer, but we would like to help everyone expand your mental models of what the world is, how it works, whatever that might mean, from wherever you're starting to wherever you're going. So how do we do it? Well, Playground meets on Tuesdays each week where we have a presentation and a discussion. And this workshop format is really built to help all of us show up knowing whatever we know and hopefully leaving knowing a bit more than that. What we have is a different presenter comes each week to share something they're working on, whether it's a product that they're building and they want to pitch it, a brand new idea that they're not even sure if it's a good idea, but at least they want to get some feedback. Or maybe it's just a big picture conversation, something you've been wondering about the way these systems work. And I say these systems and not necessarily blockchain because as you're going to see today, we're finding ourselves more and more at the intersection of blockchain and AI systems. And over these next few years, we're going to start to see more and more overlap between them. So we don't have to limit ourselves to try and understand one thing. And hopefully by having a combination of these kinds of presentation styles, we can break some new ground together. So suppose you do want to present at Playground like Harshal do today, like Kenrick did back in November, and some of the rest of us have had different chances to present here. The way it works is you find this Miro board, and all you have to do is find this table right here and pick an empty slot, write your name, what you want to present about, and that's it. You're officially on the calendar. If you're not sure how to get started, just head to gimbalabs.com/playground, and that's where you'll see an overview of the process I'm describing here and a link to this Miro board. There's also a link to the Zoom meeting that we're on right now. And as always, you can access the link gimbalabs.com/calendar just to see a list of all upcoming events. Before I hand it off to Harsha, one last thing regarding upcoming events. Live coding has been running on Wednesdays and Thursdays since last March. And for the next 2 months, it's going to be replaced with a PBL governance session. Rather than talking about the day-to-day work of working through the Plutus PBL course, we're going to make decisions about what's coming up next for Plutus PBL and maybe some other PBL courses that we could choose to build later. In order to do this, we're going to start with a 6-part driver mapping workshop. This is a critical pattern that's part of the Sociocracy 3.0 processes. And we've been testing the process in a few different places that different people here are working. And we're really finding that it's a nice way to align a group on what they want to accomplish next. And so those driver mapping workshops will be the start of PBL governance starting tomorrow, Wednesday, January 10th at 14:30 UTC. And those driver mapping workshops will continue for the next 3 weeks, after which we're going to have a primary driver statement that we can all look at and say, All right, that's a pretty fair estimation of what we all seek to do here in the months and year to come. Any questions about Playground or the coming attractions that I just shared right there? Good enough. All right, I'm really excited for what's next. And if you have any questions or want to get involved with that governance work starting tomorrow, just be sure to check the Gimbalabs Discord. It should be fun. All right, so right on time. It's 15 after the hour. I'm going to unshare and hand it over to Harsha. Hey, partner.
Hey, hey. So today, I was thinking we can structure it like this. We can play around with the indexer. It has limited usage at this point. We can play around with it for a little bit, and then we'll jump into how it works. And finally, we'll jump into how I made it just using the AI and without me knowing any level of programming. The most programming I know is like a couple of terminal commands, clear, cd that, cd this, and that's all I know. Um, so let me share my screen and let's start playing with the indexer. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so uh, 1 second, let me move this. All right. So it's a pretty basic interface. So the idea is to be able to index the information on the blockchain using natural language. So let's try something out. Let's pick a random block. And this is all for the pre-prod testnet, by the way. Let's say we want the transactions in block 0 or block 25. Uh, since this is the pre-prod, most of the blocks have 0 transactions. That I didn't realize that until I tried it, by the way. Um, Wait a minute. Okay, maybe I didn't initialize it. 1 second. Um, okay, let's try. Okay, let's just try this for now and see what it says. The current block has 1 transaction. Let's see if we can find the UTXOs in the block. So it is not able to find the UTX. Is that how it works, James? Like UTXOs in the current block, is that something that we can directly check?
I think you
Uh,
can look at transactions in a block and then UTXOs in a transaction.
oh, like that. Okay, okay, that makes sense. So,
But that raises a really interesting question, right? This query interface, you'll show us in a few minutes
mhm.
how it's actually working under the hood. But just because one of these doesn't map directly to a Maestro API call doesn't mean that we can't start to build ways to interpret what the user might actually be looking for when they ask for UTXOs in the current block.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So what James said. So I was looking for transactions in current block, but that is not. I didn't use that API, Go Maestro API, for that. So these are the things that we can currently find. One is hash transactions by count by address. So let me just try my pre-prod wallet. Copy this. I don't know which one it is. Yeah. Uh, So this is going to take a little time, but I think it'll show up. So basically what we are doing is we are using OpenAI's APIs and Go Maestro's APIs, and we are trying to talk to the blockchain and get information from the blockchain using that. Uh, so this usually takes time. So I'm just waiting on it. I'm not sure where the where it is slow, but yeah. So these are all the transactions in the specific wallet. If anyone wants to like reconfirm by checking the pre-prod, uh, we can do that. Check. So so by the way, I don't even know how to like check out Cardano scan properly. That's how little I know about anything. But if you double check all of these transactions, they should probably match all of these transactions. And I was talking to James about how like people who develop smart contracts use this at all. And I think James mentioned we use like the index and we use the UTXO. Um, I think those are the two things we use. So let's try to get those indexes and UTXOs in a specific wallet. So the basic idea is that we can get the information using natural language, and then we'll jump into. And also, does anyone have any queries that they want to ask, and we can check out? I can just show you what all queries it can take. So these are the things it can take: height, block information, UTXOs by address. Oh, all of these. So I will put this in our chat. If anyone wants to has any questions, we can check it out. Just because I've been using my wallet and querying it like all along. So if anyone has a new wallet to query. If not, any questions, James or anyone else do you guys want to check out anything in specific? If not, we can jump into how it works.
Can you give us like the 2 minute version of why you started working on this project in the first place?
Oh, so I just was watching like the YouTube video where OpenAI said, "Oh, we are providing APIs for our GPT-4," and at that point I didn't know what APIs were. Uh, but I also heard in one of the Gimbalabs playgrounds that Go Maestro has some APIs. So I was like, okay, there is this where you can talk in English, and there is like this blockchain stuff. If you combine those both, maybe you can talk to the blockchain. That's the basic idea. And then from there on, it was about working with the AI, figuring out how to get like the code from the AI, problem solving and all of that. um
Love that. So yeah, as you take us under the hood, my take on what you've built so far is that the journey is as exciting as the end product. So if you can show us how it works, but
yeah.
also kind of how
Mhm.
you learned along the way, that's incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's what I'll do. I'll speak about how it works, and then we'll jump into what I learned and how I built that.
Awesome.
So yeah, perfect. Let's see. So are you able to see my screen still?
Yeah, we can see Google Slides.
Okay, perfect. So this is basically how it works. So the user sends a query, and then there's an OpenAI call made. So this OpenAI call basically figures out what the user is asking, and then it converts that natural language query into like a Go Maestro API endpoint, or Go Maestro API specific call, whichever specific call it is. And then that call goes to the Go Maestro, and then it gets like the information from the blockchain. And then there's a third OpenAI call made. What this does is it takes the original query from the user, and it takes the information from the Go Maestro call, and it provides the final answer. That is what we are getting out here. And in between, what is there is in the first OpenAI call, there are also these helper functions. These helper functions basically they find the address and like save that, and they find like the hash, specific hash or something, they save that, and then they pass the whole thing on to the Go Maestro call. So that is like the basic structure of how it is built. And for now, like I shared, we only have a couple of things that we integrated. But we can do all of this with just like integrating all of these endpoints. And this is a lot, I think. If and I'm
And
not
this
going to
right,
set it. Yeah, yeah.
for anybody
Go
who
ahead.
doesn't know, this right here is the mesh, or sorry, the Maestro API table of contents, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you can do all of this just by like changing a couple of things in the code. So, and I think like if we can get people to directly use all of these things and just through natural language, just through like a basic talk to an AI and figure and do all of these things, I think it sounds good to me. I don't know how practical or how much sense it makes eventually, but we'll see. I mean, we're just experimenting, so might as well. So in the future, if we want to like integrate all of these, what would be changing is this. So this is, let me make this bigger. So this is like the first call that we are making to OpenAI. And in this call, we like basically said, hey, listen, this is what you can do. You can only give us these things. The possible endpoints are this, and this. I wish I could make this bigger. Is everyone able to see the whole thing, or is it being cut off?
It's a little cut off. You want to close the themes on the right-hand side? Maybe we'll be able to see
Yeah,
it.
I think that's a good idea. And I wonder if I can close this. Uh, so oh, let me make it.
But I could see it well enough to get the gist.
Okay, okay. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this. Okay. Okay, so the basic idea is you just like change this part where you're just telling it, hey, this is what you can do, and these are the examples of what kind of results I'm looking for. As you add in more of the Go Maestro endpoints or whatever endpoints, not just Go Maestro, you just need like some endpoints where you get info from the blockchain, and then you just work on this, and I think it'll be able to parse exactly what the user is asking. And fine tuning again, there's one more thing that you need to add is that like all the Go by strand points you'll have to add here over here. So we currently have only these, so you add a bunch more. And lastly, formatting. Formatting is the second call that you're making to OpenAI. In this, we can format it better. It's not formatted at this point, but if you just change this up, you can format it in any way you want so that it's best for your personal development. How do you want it to look like when you are developing your contracts and stuff like that? So that is all about like how it works. If anyone has any questions before we jump into how it's built using AI, please feel free. And also I'm curious, does anyone think this has a use in real time? Go ahead, Alex.
I just you are using OpenAI API, and I was just thinking,
Mhm.
did you think about open source AI models which are available so
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
have thought about it. It's just that for someone that has zero coding knowledge, that just looks scary. So I thought I'll do the easy one
okay, yeah,
first.
fair enough,
And
fair
then
enough.
using like the OpenAI current front end, use it to build like an open source AI thing and then use that from there on. So that's the plan for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Because there's it's okay. I'll tell you later.
Yeah, yeah. And also all of this what we have right now is open source. It's how do we share like GitHub stuff? Do you just share the link? One second. So this is
Yeah,
like all the code. You just share this link, no?
That's
Right?
right. You can drop that link into the chat and people could
Okay,
take a look.
perfect.
It depends on if you have it as a public repo or not.
Yeah, yeah, it's public. It's public, and it is so all the code is broken down for people like me who don't understand code. So all of it is broken down like this. If you're still able to see the screen. So 1 second. So these are the ones that these files are also in the code, but all the required files are broken down like this, so that anyone who is coming in new can understand what each of these does without having to worry about like the syntax and stuff. So so that they can start working on the code without knowing anything like me. Uh, so you can check that out. If anyone has questions, please feel free to ask. And if you want to do the same for your code, there's just a simple GPT initializer prompt that you need, and you can break down all your code like this. And so where is that? Yeah, so this flowchart basically breaks down, you just like provided the code, and then it is broken down. It breaks it down so that the code becomes more palatable for people. And if anyone wants this, they please feel free to use it. If not, I can give the source prompt as well, which is this. And similarly, I tend to like build like little GPTs for whatever specific project I'm doing. So I think it'd be a good idea to share source prompts in general. Okay, so coming to how I built it with just AI without having much knowledge. So this is the basic, and this is just an opinion. So this is not like written in stone or anything. This is the process I followed. So for me, natural language programming is basically solving any problem using AI. And how it is done is basically by first you define the problem, you understand the advantages and limitations of the problem that you're, or not the problem, of the AI that you're working with. Because I've used Chat GPT, I've used Copilot, I've used the other one, the Google stuff. And for me, Chat GPT worked best because I can give it large chunks of information and still like it being able to process it. And then once you understand the advantages and limitations of your AI, then you start role playing with the AI to get the output from it. And once you get the output, you verify the validity of the output. And then you keep providing the AI back feedback. And sometimes the AI is not able to solve a problem. So that means there is some gap in its knowledge. So in that case, what you have to do is you have to identify exactly where the problem is, and then find the information required to solve that problem and give it to the AI. And once the AI has that information, it can solve the problem for you and give the output. And you just like keep repeating that process. And this is just like a visual representation of how it is. You have like a initial problem, you break it down. Is it able to solve the problem? If it is able to solve the problem, get the output. If it's not able to get the output, then figure out where it is not able to solve and give it like the information required. And coming to the limitations of AI, and this is again based on my personal experience, working with an AI is almost like, have you guys seen that movie, 50 First Dates? So there is like a lady that keeps forgetting stuff. So it's exactly like that. You're talking to
That's
an
a
AI.
really funny metaphor.
But it's exactly like working with that. So where you're working, you're in the groove, and all of a sudden AI forgets, and it's like, oh, I can't like give you the code because I don't know what you're talking about and stuff like that. So getting the output in when you're working with AI is like a save point. You're saving your work. So yeah, so one thing is like the memory, it keeps forgetting. The other thing is the speed. Sometimes it's really slow. And it's not very efficient when it comes to parsing and retrieving data, internal data, specifically when you're using my GPTs. The data, if you ask it to retrieve it, it doesn't like necessarily give correct answers all the time. So that is another problem. And the last problem is like the internal locks that OpenAI or Google have. And it's terrible because, you know, AI can do so much more than what we are seeing, I feel like, because there once in a while they keep changing the internal weights. So all of a sudden you ask a question and it gives you all the code, and all of the code works properly, and sometimes it just doesn't do it. So it depends on what they're doing internally. Uh, and working around the limitations, like I said, the most important thing is uh, to get that output, because the output is almost like a save point. And also, it's good to create a GPT for every personal project, because this is very similar to the IDEs for programmers, they work. So you have like a space where the AI already knows the context and what you're working towards and all of that. So it's good to create a MyGPT as an IDE whenever you're starting a project. And after each work session, uh, it is always a good idea to ask the AI, okay, listen, we have completed this much work. If I want to restart the session, please give me a prompt with all the necessary information. So when you restart a session, what happens is it forgets again. So with this prompt, you just feed it and then it remembers again where you stopped, and you can start from that point again. And lastly, the role
Harsha,
playing. Yeah, go ahead.
do you have an example of a continuation prompt?
Yeah, I have an example here. Session continuation prompt. So this is the subject, description, task at hand, current code, whatever that is, additional context, usage. So that is like a big saving prompt. For like a shorter saving prompt, this is like a certain continuation, bigger picture prompt, where you're not specifically, you don't have a specific problem to solve in mind, but you just want to continue the bigger process in general. So yeah, so I'll share all of these eventually. And lastly, when it comes to role playing, this is something that you don't have to think, like every second of it, you don't have to think. But in general, whenever you are working with the AI, this is again an opinion, you usually take up three roles. Either you take up the role of a master, a friend, or the donkey. And none of them is like better or worse. They're just three different roles. And whenever you take up the role of the master, the AI takes up the role of the donkey. And when you take up the role of the donkey, the AI takes up the role of the master. And with friends, you just like talking to each other, sharing opinions and stuff like that. And specifically, this donkey part is useful when you do not know what to do and the AI has to tell you exactly what to do. And for me, it happened a lot where I just had to tell the AI, listen, I don't know what I'm doing. Just give me like the code, tell me exactly where to place it, and then I'll place it. And then when you are the master, you tell it, okay, no, you are doing something wrong. So I'll tell you how to correct it. So these are the three roles that I was taking up in the process of development. So that's all I have. If anyone has questions, please feel free to ask.
Hey Hersa.
Hey.
Uh yeah, this looks amazing. Like you're laying the groundwork of a lot of things that can be built upon this. Like
Oh,
with a
thank you.
couple of more restrictions, this can be like, hey, convert my ADA to gimbals, like, and the AI can trigger all the transactions and you convert your AI.
100%. I think right now also it's possible, because I think Dex Hunter has made their like this has made their thing open source. So if we use that, maybe we can directly, find the best price, and also like, find the liquidity pool and exchange stuff.
Yeah, this is going to lower the entry for barrier to, blockchain ecosystems a lot. I think we can utilize AI in that aspect to just, lower the
I
barrier of
agree.
entry.
I agree. I agree. I mean, coming from someone that doesn't know anything about the blockchain, I think it will be like a good, gateway drug into Cardano.
Thanks, man. Thanks for saying this, lah.
Oh, for
It's
sure, for
it's
sure,
it's cool.
for sure. Yeah.
I found it interesting that you moved from Copilot. I think when you first showed this to me, you were still using Copilot inside of the VS Code. And now you have this refined system for building a helpful kind of support agent right there in the Chat GPT interface.
Mhm.
Um, what was that moment of transition like where you started thinking, oh, I like this option better of having my temporary helpful agent?
Oh, so I'm not loyal to any of these centralized guys. I don't care. Like eventually, I would prefer to move to like something open source. But the advantage that we have with ChatGPT is that you can give it information in any way. If you want to just take a screenshot, give it. For example, let me just say, where is this? So in ChatGPT, for example, say I want to I'll go to Go. I'll just start new one. So say for example, I want to create this website. I'm just taking a random example. So what I can do is I can just like copy this and then I can share this with this and say, what can be the front end code for this? I mean, I'm just like asking it. Sometimes it gives the answer. Sometimes it gives me like how I can write the code. I'll just
Oh,
ask
hey,
it.
hey, can
Yeah.
you share again?
Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen.
All
I'm
good,
okay,
all
my
good.
bad. Uh, so now it is giving me a bunch of things. So this is like completely random. I took like a random thing, and then it's giving me, it'll give me the code. And then now it is my job to like actually put it in VS Code and check if it's working or not, what are the problems. But even before that, what I like to do is, okay, let it give the code. What I like to do is copy this code, go to the code flow breakdown, break it down and see what are the elements inside of it, and make sense of the code before I start jumping in. So I don't know how it'll look initially, at least like the first two iterations, it'll look horrible. It'll not show up. It'll be blank screen. A bunch of things will happen. So what I would do is I'd copy this code, go to code flow, put it in here so that I'll have like a breakdown of the code here. So it says whatever blockchain explorer. Um, So yeah, so you just put it, you figure it out, you break it down, you figure out what's happening, work with the AI, get the information required, feed it, and get the final code. So that's the process.
I really like that workflow. Yeah. Maybe from a learning perspective, Harsha or anybody
Mhm.
else who's been learning development, whether it's, using these more AI oriented tools or you've been learning Cardano development, what's everybody thinking about the learner workflow you're seeing here?
I mean, if you want, I can go. So for me, the learner workflow was not necessarily to learn everything about it, but just to learn the things that I need when I need it.
One of the hardest things about learning in a new ecosystem, especially, is it's really hard to know what you don't know. And you're making me think about how this can be a tool to help people with the unknown unknowns, right? As we discover, oh, wow, I thought I was getting this, but I realized that this rabbit hole is so much deeper. And so maybe here's a way that I can start to make some progress there now. Alex, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking the idea of having like how to say natural user interface to program to a computer program is very tempting and very nice, and using the AI tools for that is pretty cool. I found that it takes a while. For example, with the open source models, which are pretty small, but they don't require API key, the code it generates is like I didn't even test it. I just realized it wouldn't run from the like how it looked. But Rust is pretty well covered, and I spent the last week doing pretty much the same thing, just writing documentation, like what is the next step for building the project that I have in mind. Yeah, and I think in the scope of Cardano, there's nice opportunity because, for example, for web development, pretty well covered. And if you ask the right questions, it takes some time, but like you can figure out the steps to build a pretty complex project if you don't have much experience. It's like kind of dynamic documentation. But some areas, as Harsha said, are not very well covered. So in there's some kind of opportunity to research how, like, for example, fine-tuning or knowledge embedding could be used with existing models to, for example, make specifically for like Haskell Plutus development, like a dynamic documentation. And with the Harsha's idea also, think like, the next prompt suggestion, because it's not really different from an API when you have like calls just named in natural language. It does takes a longer time to type them, but if you have suggestions of what you can do and it helps you with the things that you don't know in an intelligent way, suggesting like for like a lot of time figuring out a computer program is you looking for specific or package or like language primitive or like internal library call which would solve the specific thing that you need. And it takes a lot of time to find it, often, for me at least, I don't know. So having a kind of helper there would be very kind of, I think, it has potential, yeah.
How do you distinguish between this helper that you're describing this way and maybe a textbook that, we would have been learning from 20 years ago?
That's very cool question because like you can ask a question, and even if your question, like you cannot ask a question to a book, you can only ask a question to a teacher. And it's a very intelligent teacher ability to be able to give good answer to a student who is asking a meaningful question. And then the students kind of geniality comes to asking the right question. Like if you know a person who knows and you can ask them the right question, you can get the answer and also sometimes the solution. And here is, if you have a book, you need to use a kind of search algorithm, even just an intuitive, search by eyes to find the information that you need. But it goes from the opposite way. You input a question or a statement, and then you see kind of representation of abstract language space that connects to the words that you describe. And sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think even when we I remember using textbooks back in the day. And even then, by the end of the day, I had to take notes or make those underlines and put stickets in textbooks and all of that to figure out where exactly the information is. But with AI, you can index the knowledge without knowing anything, I feel like. So that's really good.
I've been working on an agent trained on the Plutus PBL and other course PBL lessons we've written so far. and not just trying to get the information right. In some cases, the information is one of the bottlenecks here, because so much of Cardano development or Web3 development in general is brand new, right? It's not even in the LLM's data set. But as I've been doing so, one of the unexpected things I find myself thinking about is that question, Alex, I just asked you, like, what is this relationship between books and these agents? And I like your answer. And I can't help wondering, like, to what extent might agents replace textbooks, right? I could be a textbook author. I could be on the consortium of authors that helped to write a textbook. But what if instead we made an agent, and we were just as careful to give that agent a voice and specific knowledge, and what's that worth, and then from that, what are the implications of that, right? What if custom agents like this do become a new publishing modality for authors? Does that get anybody going in any particular direction?
That's really quite interesting. That's a fascinating idea. I don't know what to think of it yet, but it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I think writing books and reading books might become a dom.
Oh, Nelson, you broke up right there. I heard you say writing books and reading books might become, but then we lost you for a sec.
Hmm.
Can you guys hear me?
Hey, we got you back. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just thinking that in classrooms, the way children are taught in classrooms, like reading books or writing texts, essays, and all this stuff on paper might become a stream or domain of its own, and the standard way of teaching a student might be just interacting with these kinds of agents, and the other way, like the other path, maybe specific to some literature or something, or a hobby.
Yeah, it takes me into that zone of identity and the way humans interact. I mean, we interact with an author through a book. But when you're in a good book, even a textbook, like the author comes alive, and it's really feels like you're in they're guiding you along in a path, a curriculum, some set part, where activities build on each other, and you go through an arc, and there are like challenges, and you want to quit, and then you have an epiphany, and it's the beautiful learning journey, but with these personified, agents that we can interact in our own language. For instance, one of the things about global distributed networks and learning schools like this is that, what if the book's not translated in your language, or you're reading it opens up to me that idea of project-based learning, of like getting a project and then just starting where you are. It's just like, yeah, I know all that, but I need help with this. And that's always given teachers that I've known just like a fit. They're like, no, go back to the beginning and learn these fundamentals. It's like, well, actually, I'm not really interested in, Mary Had a Little Lamb, but I really am interested in this. And the beautiful thing is, because I understand it, you're going to get stuck and then you're gonna like, okay, now you have to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb, and that's, but it just comes in the appropriate time. It feels like this is like really an accelerator to the project-based learning, because then all of a sudden you've got an easily accessible personified, guide or assistant. Yeah.
It's really
Because I mean, Harsha is talking about it. I mean, he has some. Harsha, you've got coding experience. He and I went through the CS50, the first half of CS50 this
I
year.
mean, I don't think we should call it coding experience really, because like people here
No,
know.
man, come on, dude.
Yeah, CS50 is coding. Yeah, I
No,
even went through it.
no, but we didn't even finish it. We didn't even finish C yet.
No, we finished C. We got up to. No, we didn't.
You've got
we
the
almost got there.
humility of a real OG, though. That's right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the beautiful thing is that it's with sort of a synthetic buddy, and then Alex here, and like you've got real buddies that are willing to like give you the because the AI doesn't know everybody, but being able to have like a social learning network in Gimbalabs, where, because my metaphor is like you're going to get stuck. I don't know if you guys have ever talked about it, like a 4-wheel drive truck. It's like, oh, I've got this awesome 4-wheel drive truck. That just means you get stuck farther into the woods. So I think that the AIs will get you stuck farther into your project. You're going to get way into your project and be like, I can't, like it's shut down. I can't get there. But then you've got a big group of folks, here that can help you get unstuck with our live codings and etc. I see Kendrick's hand.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience with the limits of ChatGPT this past month. So I do a lot of scientific literature reading, and so I'm always using Google Scholar to find new articles. And I thought, oh, maybe I could use ChatGPT to search for good articles and ask questions about the research. And it was going well. It was actually giving me good summaries of questions I had, and then I'd ask it for references, and it would find some good papers. But occasionally, I couldn't find the paper, even though it sounded interesting. And then one night I was kind of sleeping on it. I was like, oh, ChatGPT must be making up these references. And so sure enough, the next time I couldn't find the paper, I asked it, is that a real paper or did you make it up? And it confessed that it had just made it up. It had a title, it had authors, and it had dates, and they all made sense, but they weren't actual papers.
Wow.
ChatGPT is famously terrible at academic papers and stuff like that. It's a massive liar. It makes stuff up, and then you're putting bibliography that's non-existent. My wife has some papers, and she was like, "No, this is my paper," and they're attributed to someone else, and the title's not even correct. It's a bunch of stuff that's just not good.
Yeah.
I
It
agree.
complements it
Yeah.
well though. Like it's a great complement to these other tools. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
But I've also been, part of why I was doing that is because I was kind of impressed at how well it summarized some very specialized fields that I've worked in.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
that comes back.
Well, kind of, I don't know. Did you hear about illicit?
About what?
Illicit.
No. What is that?
So, like ChatGPT is a general purpose AI, and then things you can do with the model, you can adjust it, and even if some people are very smart, they can build an own model from start. And illicit is a service which is commercial, but it provides like specific engine for AI trained on scientific literature, and it provides several like workflows where you can like do typical stuff about like working with scientific literature, and it helps you. And I found it was pretty good. We were in a book club.
Yeah,
we had a question specific to two fields, as like a field of biosecurity and a field of climate change. And the question was fairly specific to these two kind of pretty far away fields. And the engine get me exactly the paper which was talking about the question, and it summarized it nicely.
Okay, that sounds interesting. I'll try it out. Yeah, another tool I use is Semantic Scholar, which is built by the Allen Institute, and I see that like they've been incorporating AI technology into the way their search engine works.
I think if you can have this Semantic Scholar, they have this time like updates, when they send you papers on the topics that you follow. And then you can use Google API to translate it into a LLM, which will summarize the paper for you, and you would have a LinkedIn post with like papers that you follow automatically.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
What makes Semantic Scholar's results better?
I don't know if it's better. I like Google Scholar, but I've also been trying Semantic Scholar. They're both good, and I think a little bit like Alex just said, Semantic Scholar does often with articles provide a nice summary that's AI generated. And it has some other features that are kind of handy. So they're both good. I wouldn't say one is better than the other.
Yeah. You know, research, I mean, we're talking about like AI supported research. And things that I always resonated with was, coming up with the answers, sort of like an answer focused education versus coming up with good questions. And it seems like now this is being, because you really have to formulating the question to ask the resource, in this case an AI. But then even before, like, you have a question, it's like, okay, what's your guiding question? Like, what is it that you're trying to solve? Like, what's your problem? What's your project? Where are you stuck? And now I think that that's one of the skills that I'm really honing. And actually, one of the things I look forward to, a lot of times I don't even type it, I don't even submit the question, but I formulate it in my mind. I was like, okay, ChatGPT, here's the context, here's what I need. And then I'm getting more evolved, and I'm like, I need you to do this, and I think that's on our way to making these custom GPTs. Which is one of the things that I was really impressed with Harsha's work, is like creating this custom GPT to help him with this work, and like really devising, pioneering a whole framework for doing that. And wouldn't it be cool if, if Kendrick is like, oh, okay, here's like creates a custom GPT, or, like on how to do this, because it's really, we're pioneering new roads here.
Right.
Yeah.
Newman, I really love that point about question construction, and have been thinking about that too. What is the more valuable skill moving forward, having the answer or having a good question? And I think we're aligned on what we think the answer might be, and certainly what I hope the answer is around questions. And I used to take a lot of flack from 14-year-olds who year after year would say to me, Mister, why do you always answer my question with a question? And I feel kind of vindicated now. It feels good to get. But in all seriousness, that was the September and October mindset of kids. And if you
Right.
work with them for a year, answering their questions with a question, by the spring they expect it and they want that, right? And it takes some practice, it takes some patience on the part of everybody. But once you get there, that promised land is so valuable, right? Now, we've been thinking about in education the difference between competition and collaboration, right? And I think this maps. I think competition is about being the fastest and the first to have the most right answers, whereas collaboration is about asking questions that drive the entire field of inquiry forward together, right? But here's where it comes kind of really interestingly full circle. Just think about vocabulary. My son is in 7th grade. Flashcards, for example, right? He was studying for a vocab quiz the other day. He's in an ancient Civ course for the first time and has taken middle school level quizzes for the first time in his life, and he really wants to get all the questions right. But if the end goal is a vocab quiz, what is the best I could hope to achieve in my incorporation of that new language into my mental model, right? This is this kind of skill and drill, the cram and forget models that so many of us have maybe experienced. But coming full circle to asking a question of an agent, now look at how much more valuable vocab is. I can't ask the question I wanted to ask if I don't know the precise vocabulary that I want to use. And now knowing a big word, it's not just knowing a big word to impress people. Hey, if I know the word for that thing I'm trying to think about, I can ask a more concise and precise question of the agent I'm getting, right? And so maybe vocab matters more now, but for a roundabout reason that we never could have discovered if we just stay in the competitive mindset.
For folks, I've been dabbling in vocab, and like creating lists and flashcards and stuff. It's kind of a danger zone because it feels like that's the old skill and drill, and sort of the what do they call it? It's like some metaphor with vomiting up the information. It's just like, oh yeah, you stuff it, you gorge, and then you just vomit up the things, and then you're okay, I don't need it. But I think that the step, it's like getting into the projects. It's like having that. Okay, and this is what you're saying, James, is that once you have that vocabulary, then you can communicate with a professional in a professional way. But the problem was that we didn't scale, so we couldn't have a personal professional to use professional language and vernacular and terminology with, So maybe that's a chat GPT. Am I using these words correctly? Yeah. And it is one of those foundational skills. And I get the whole it's just easy to do. Like when you've got all this world problem complexity, it's just like it's super easy to just say, here's this test. I can generate it fairly easily, and I can grade it fairly easily. But it does have value in this new system. Coming up with questions, getting precise answers, getting the right answer.
It's really interesting. Internships are kind of a mixed blessing here in the United States, right? We have this internship regime where people who can afford to not work for a season, get in on jobs that are later on much more lucrative, right? Now,
Yeah.
what's the real value of that internship regime, right? Well, there's a lot of ways you could slice and dice it, but to the student, you had a chance to find out at a young age what it's like to talk to professionals.
Right.
And
Right.
what I mean, you get that at 19 years old, 20 years old. That's an advantage that compounds, right? Just like interest does. And that's if we could maybe give more people a chance to find out, hey, what does it feel like to participate in this conversation with a professional? That's pretty interesting.
And and I don't mean to hog the conversation, so please jump in if you've got stuff. But there's something I read something about student projects and like the kind of, I don't know, like they weren't real world enough. And it seems like an intern is just like, no, you're going to work on production code. We're not going to let you go off the rails. And that's why it's kind of you're with your time, you're paying someone to make sure that you don't mess anything up. Um, uh, it is interesting in the AI and this Harsha's model of having a like the relationship of the donkey and the friend, and like those type of things I think are really important. And then the switching, right, Harsha, it's just like you kind of have to say, oh, I'm the intern, or I'm the professional, I'm the guide. I think there's some overlap there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you don't have to actively think of it. Or at least I didn't actively think of it, though. It just had to happen to finish that step.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying out this Elicit tool, and it is interesting. It came up with an article I hadn't seen before, and something I'm working on. But I also noticed it links to Semantic Scholar. So I'm wondering if it actually uses Semantic Scholar as part of its, core engine.
Oh, you think it's accessing the Semantic Scholar?
Well, I don't know for sure. I just noticed that when I brought up the article right next to like the number of citations, it had a link to Semantic Scholar in order to see the article itself. So I think that's kind of interesting. All these tools can fit together. So they leverage each other, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, but it does look like a really interesting tool. I'm going to try it out.
Some value. That's some value there for sure.
Yeah.
We're talking about. Oh, go ahead, Harsha. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll do it later. Yeah.
I wanted to observe that right now when we talk about like the Elicit UI or Semantic Scholar, a big part of what we're talking about is on the consumer end of information, right? And then how these tools can help us find the answers we're looking for. We could talk about our skills as question askers, but what about on the other side, on the research side? Are these tools changing anything for the economics of knowledge creation? That's been a hard thing, I know, for research scientists, for example, for a long time, right? It's hard to know for sure that you're going to be appropriately compensated for groundbreaking research. Do these tools change that math at all?
If AGI comes into the picture, then I think, yeah, they can innovate, right? That's what the general definition says. I guess AGI, they can think, they can innovate. So if they can innovate, then what's the difference?
what's the economic outcome of that inflection point?
Maybe people can take more relaxed vacations. I don't know.
I like the way you think.
One of the ways I've heard research characterized is its function is to reduce risk about the future. You know, so I don't know if this is a good analogy, but like if you look at the history of Microsoft, you know, in its early days, it was just a small team and they're just doing pioneering work. And they were the ones that were kind of had the foresight to be successful, right? And they were kind of had a reputation of not doing research. But as they become a gigantic enterprise, they have a lot more risk about being able to maintain that status.
Right.
And so that's where they now have a requirement to invest in research to kind of protect their role as a you know, first mover in computer engineering. And I think today they would be certainly characterized as one of, you know, well, for instance, they are the lead developer in ChatGPT, excuse me, the lead investor.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of gets me into that a little bit into my conspiracy, you know, zone because of disruptive innovation. It's sort of like they'll do research to sort of protect, you know, their future. And as long as they see a spot like these big, you know, not corporations, but their big investment, you know, it's like it's a protective thing as opposed to you know, maybe like the push-pull model.
Right.
There's some polarity at play there, in the sort of innovation space, in true research versus practical research, and how, I guess, how we surface or discover like those big questions as opposed to sort of coming up with a new feature on the thing. And I don't know if that's where that takes me. It's like, oof. Because it does feel like research and development like has gotten gutted, you know. I grew up 70s, early 80s, and I was always like, I can't wait to work in, you know, research and development. I want to be an engineer. I want to solve these big ass problems. And you know, like it's going to be awesome. Like we'll just get in there and if we just connected everybody and they could share information, we'd do it. And then I was like, well, they need to connect everywhere where it's super easy to get to. Like if you just had like a little device, you know, that just would do it. And then it's just like, oh, why did it? It's like I asked the genie in the bottle and it kept giving me everything that I wanted, but in a totally like wrong way. Yeah. So, but I am still hopeful because I do think that we've got the resources. I do think that we've got you know, the intelligence, and even with this augmented intelligence, Harsha will tell you, he's just like, he has always made the point. He's like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm creating a friend, a guide, a practical agent that will help me. And then really giving him the confidence, because I was like, holy crap, man, he's gone. I don't think, Harsha, had you ever really worked with an API, and much less like two or three?
No. I mean, I heard the word. That's it.
Yeah. I was like, these are really important, right? And then you're just like, okay, I mean,
right.
You know, and maybe that's the same way with like scholarship, you know, in an academic world. It's just like, okay, I'm not a scholar, even though I've called myself an independent scholar, and but you know, maybe we can level up and get non-academics to sort of learn the vernacular and sort of play around, just like Harsha does with this development in API. They were like, oh yeah, well, with my super scholar friend here, who's synthetic or an LLM. Like we can express our ideas, and I think that's a fundamental thing. It's just like, yeah, we've got ideas and they're valid, which is really a fundamental thing of this community. And from this latest thing, it's like, it's important. Like, your vision is important. Like, this is and to express it and to get into a problem and to solve it, and problem solving is a big part of Gimbalabs. I see good things. Kind of went on a weird spot there. I don't know.
But I want to support what you just said, because it's like this perspective is not very familiar to you and James, for example. Because for me, like, it so happens that English is the language of science and language of technology, which it doesn't happen to be my first language. And every time I read back to like the catalyst proposals I submitted, or like other things that I wrote by myself, it's like I mess things up. And if I can create like English language sentence which delivers my point and at the same time less painful to read, that what I would have written,
I love it.
makes sense.
But why would you say English is the language at this point? At this point, any natural language would do. If you speak Russian, you can program in Russian as well, right? Like, why do you think it's English? Or if there is something in English, you can put it in GPT and convert it to Russian, or whichever.
I mean, in general, man, it's like, if you want to, for example, if you want to learn like I do, like I like writing software tests, and figuring out like how the hell this program like may exist, how we can reason about this program. And if I want to learn in Russian, it's really painful, because like the things that we have, I need to find like the textbooks, and I don't have the dynamic documentation which exists now. Because like now, going on the internet in English language space, you can find documentation like on Haskell for sure. It's like, because Glasgow Haskell compiler, it's like English is the language of Chinese maybe as well. We don't know about that. But if I want to learn, I learn in English, because like just the language space is so rich, and I can make money probably in some areas translating English knowledge to Russian language, like the state of the art which is being developed, because people don't understand it who don't have like English skills, but maybe still needed in Russia, because like it's still technology that is being used, so it so happens to be just.
Yeah, interesting.
That was a line in Da Vinci Code. I didn't know that.
By the way,
I love it.
It's a great fact.
Harsha is dropping Da Vinci Code quotes. I like that. Okay, all right.
By the way, to let people know, Photrek has some new projects with Singularity Mat, and we're looking to bring someone on the team that has both machine learning and systems administration skills. So if anyone's interested, or if you know someone who, you think should reach out to us, that would be great.
Thanks.
So I have a quick question. So assuming in the future, we don't have to worry about syntax. I don't know about like people who are well versed with programming. Like, does syntax add anything to your life? For me, it has brought nothing but pain. And if I can get away with syntax and focus on the logic, my life becomes so much easier. So in a world where we can only focus on logic, what do you think like students are taught? Like, how do you think students learn programming specifically, that is?
I have an experiential note on that. I think I put in the longest developer days of my life to date over the last 6 months building some of the Andamio stuff. And once you know what the task is, whether you're getting an agent to help or not, you can kind of go on cruise control, right? Like, I can turn up the music, slam a cup of coffee, get up at whatever hour of the day and just roll on that. But the more I've tried to use like a prompt to help me get code snippets, the more I find that when I'm not well rested, I really struggle to ask the question of the agent, right? And so it's I've actually felt it in a very physical sense, the attention distinction between just banging out code and naming what it is I want to accomplish in that moment. So I think it goes back to language, like we were talking about earlier, and it goes back to like, the skill of being able to precisely define any sort of technical requirements, software, hardware engineering, the list goes on. That will, I think, always be a priceless skill. I mean, until Nelson and I are sitting on the beach next to each other because AGI took care of it all for us, right? But predating that, yeah, problem specification is priceless, I think.
Yeah, I think syntax are going to stay there as new, mm, even as we're bridging our human knowledge to the binary world, the virtual world, to talk to each other. That's where these things comes up, and I think it's going to exist and it's going to evolve. Once we're going to see quantum computers soon, and those are going to give a whole lot of different syntax, and even the the mental model is also needs to change from the binary logic that we are currently acquainted with. The quantum computers, it's going to be an exciting age too. Yeah, so that's once their new syntax are coming on your way, Harsa. So get ready.
All right, I'll jump in. Syntax is like that precise, tactical, like like you kind of have it down and you slam the coffee and you just you can kind of crank away. And then the logic is like coming up with the big thing that's more strategic, like big picture thinking, like pseudo code, like, okay, I needed to do this, I needed to do that. It's also sort of quick. But there's a beautiful interaction between the two. I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to work and live in foreign countries where my mother tongue wasn't spoken. And there's this magical moment, I don't know, a few weeks or a few months in, where you just sort of wake up and are thinking in the language, the local language. And you're just like, oh yeah, and then like your mom calls on the phone and you can't really talk to her for a moment. You're like, and so, and I think what that is that your mental model changes. So your structure, your brain is really going through a change. And that I think is a big part of learning. And kind of cool in the idea of teaching is just like, okay, the junior interns, their mental models aren't formed yet. Or they're working in a different sort of zone. They're having to translate, so things get mistranslated or it takes a lot of time. So, and whenever there's like that like ping pong match, I also think about the iteration, because goes to one side and it goes to the other. It's kind of like a walk, it's like a walking gait. You're on your logic, you're on your syntax, and then you move, forward or in some direction. I think there is something there. And I'm curious, when the question that I had was sort of like the idea of a no code solutions, like using, and really that spectrum is like frameworks. It's just like, okay, the level of abstraction, and where that takes us. As far as
That sounds like another, can we do a playground session about the politics of abstraction? Whoever abstracts the thing, you got to be able to at least understand what they're hiding, right?
Exactly. And it's funny because like some of my early coding days, and this was like, and they were like, they wanted to teach me assembly. And I remember like speaking about like learning like from books and stuff, there's like this crazy manual that just was completely not in my language, and I'm like, man, what in the world? But there is this real like, no, you don't learn this, because what's actually going on is this. It's like a drive towards reality. There is some juicy psychology in there. But my point, and the thing that I'm really grooving on at the moment, is that it has to go back and forth. Like you have to abstract and then you have to come back. And you're like, okay, and have I changed? Am I in a different spot now since the last time I visited this? That to me is a real rewarding kind of insight. Because it's not going backwards. You're not going backwards. You're just in a different spot. You're just sort of,
you're reading Moby Dick again and seeing it differently this time around.
Exactly.
So this actually, I think this brings us full circle, right? Just at the beginning of this session, Kenrick asked, "Hey, isn't Agile over?" In so many words, right? Now, but let's connect that to Newman, your point about mental models, right? The hierarchical model of the firm says you've got your product team and your product manager who defines specs. And only when those specs are perfectly defined, you pass them off to the engineers, they bang it out, right? And that's why it's possible to outsource specs to engineers somewhere far away who probably don't get paid as much as they're worth, and everything that follows, right? But Newman, what you're saying is there needs to be more give and take, right? We benefit when we go back and forth between the syntax and what the plan is. And we've been doing that because we have to in the Cardano ecosystem, because everything's brand new. How do we create new design patterns? Well, we just try to solve a problem, right? But part of what I'm hearing you say is that maybe we could do to have that be just a bit more of our mental model in general. And maybe if part of our goal here is to see what benefits to collective problem solving happen, when we're not trying to like break down hierarchies for its own sake, right? That's the Web 2 logic of disruption, which I don't know how valuable that is, right? What we're saying is, hey, is this hierarchy ever getting in our way? And if so, is there maybe a different way to look at it, or just a different one we can apply when the need emerges? And I'm really excited to be there together this year, right? Like how do we do more of that back and forth, right? The opposite of a hierarchy isn't anarchy, but maybe it's more of a fluid circle.
Yeah, Ted Rowe, who's the founder of Sociocracy for All, the way he describes it in a lot of his writing is it's a balance between autonomy and alignment. So autonomy is kind of the decentralized part, where you want to make sure that individuals and teams have the autonomy to make their own decisions. But then at the same time, there's still a need to make sure that everyone is aligned with kind of core missions, visions, and responsibilities of an organization, or even if that organization is kind of diffuse. So I've been using that phrase a lot, like they need to balance autonomy and alignment.
I like that. I like that. If that excites anybody else, that's exactly what we're jumping into tomorrow. Okay, so today's Tuesday. Tomorrow during live coding time and continuing on Wednesdays and Thursdays for the next 3 weeks, we're going to get together and we're going to work through, it's called a driver mapping workshop for anybody who hasn't heard the term before. But the concept is essentially pointing towards what Kenrick is talking about, is that alignment part of the work. How do you get Gimbalabs really isn't even formally an organization, right? We have spaces to meet, and that's pretty much what we got right now. So if people want to level up in terms of how we're collaborating here, or if we want to move, from the handful of things that are happening like Plutus PBL and these playground sessions to any other outcomes, the thinking is the way to do that is to start by aligning at a high level and then to allow the details to emerge. So we're going to start that work with a driver mapping workshop starting tomorrow. Definitely invite anybody to participate, and the details are in the Gimbalabs Discord.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah,
I wish I could
pretty
join
great
you.
that's happening. Can you make it?
I wish I could join you. No, I'm really glad I came today. I always want to come to this. It's just there's so many other things that get in the way. But I'm really glad I came today. This was terrific.
Thanks for being here. And yeah, we'll share more. I think there's more to say about alignment and autonomy, and how our educational model relates to that. That's really the whole purpose of the learning targets.
I'm really interested to hear how
target,
that all
right?
comes out.
Learning target says, hey, here's what people are going to try to learn, right? But we make no claim on what is the one best way to learn that thing. There might be many pathways towards achieving the learning target, as long as we agree on here's back to precise wording again, right? As long as we agree on the precisely worded goal for why people are learning, then a diffuse group of people can all attack that question from any number of angles. How are we going to teach people how to install a wallet, right? Or to mint an NFT? Well, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get to see that emerge with greater clarity over these next few months.
Super.
Well, hey, if on average every playground session is like this one, I think we're in for a good year.
Yes,
We
sir.
Yeah, terrific.
Great technical demo, Harsha. Thanks for bringing such a work in progress to us. And I know you thought a lot about this presentation, so thanks for
sure, yeah.
organizing and sharing it. And thanks to everybody for taking, doing Playground proud by taking the conversation in a whole bunch of interesting directions after that. Thank you. All right.
All right. Well, I used the Licit to find a terrific paper called Uncertain Temporal Knowledge Graphs. So that's what I'm going to be digging into the rest of the week.
Yes.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
That's fun.
Great to see you all. Have a great week.
Hey,
Thanks, Kendrick. See you, man.
See you soon, everybody.
All right. Bye, y'all. Thanks.
Cheers.
See you later. See you tomorrow.